looks like we are live. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I just needed to set up my little phone to view the live chat because I won't be doing that on the screen. So, hopefully I remember to switch back. So, yeah, it's been a little while since I've done a stream. Before I get to that, though, I have to apologize if I look and sound tired because I am very tired. For a good reason. I'm working hard on a project, and basically I can't talk a huge amount about it because the company has asked me not to discuss it, and that's totally understandable. But I am kind of in the selection process for a local company as an Android developer, so that's kind of something that I'm super stoked about. Now, at the same time, I have to complete a coding challenge, obviously, for the company. And so basically, longer story short, I've spent many of the past waking hours programming Android apps. So anyways, what I thought I would do is I've been spending so much time just thinking about that particular project, and I thought, well, why don't I just jump to something that is still programming, so I'm not going to beat myself up later, but is something it's not that I don't want to do the other thing, but I just really want to talk about software architecture today. It's something I think about all the time because it's what I do all the time now until I'm successful at it. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. So what we're going to do is I wanted to discuss two things today. And let me switch back to the code view. Now, you'll notice that my setup has changed from my regular viewers. My setup has changed quite a bit. I no longer have two monitors. I actually have an upgraded computer now, which is really cool. And but it's not compatible with both my monitors. So I'm actually going to be monitoring the chat through my phone. And it's going to be a little bit different setup from usual. Also, I am really tired right now. So if you're watching the recorded version, you're probably going to want to watch it on 1.25 speed or something like that. So it is what it is. So what I wanted to talk about today was unit testing and modular code. Now, why do I want to talk about those things in particular? Over the past couple months, they are two of the... I've learned a lot of really interesting things, but let me just demonstrate it. I think that'll be easier. So, I've been working on this application for a while, which is called Postrainer, and I've basically been refactoring it completely. So if you're watching this playlist, chances are you've seen the other videos of it. The app isn't actually... the version that I'm working on now is not the version which is on the actual Play Store. I've actually refactored it completely because the older version had really bad software architecture, and it was something I made like a year ago when I was worse at programming. So I thought, well, it's on the Play Store. I already had it open source. I thought, well, why don't I go back and clean it up? So what I have been doing is basically rebuilding the whole architecture, restructuring things. And it was kind of my playground to put a whole bunch of stuff that I learned in creating the Profiler app kind of into a more refined process. Because when I was building Profiler, the problem with it is that I was still quite new to the material. And sorry, I'm probably going to get some water. My mouth is dry. But I was still very new to the material, and a lot of things that I had kind of done wrong earlier in the project, they were things that were had other things built on top of them. Longer story shorter, I kind of wanted to just start fresh. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop into a demo for this project. Let me just make sure I'm in the right... Yeah. So I've fired it up on my emulator. Here, actually, let me run it from scratch. Make sure that it's launched. So I think you'll find this interesting. This has everything to do with unit testing and modular code. And now it's not going to behave, of course. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Oh, come on. All right, I think it crashed. One second. Yeah, okay. Let's just try that again. It's probably going to need to fire up. Emulators, they're so questionable. So questionable. Okay. Let's hope it works this time. So when we actually get to the demo, I feel like Steve Jobs doing his like his big one of his big Apple demos, and he's like trying to do it and then something goes wrong. I feel like I should get really angry and throw like something at someone like, are you serious? Anyway, sorry. Not ripping on Steve Jobs, but that's what it reminded me of. So this is the application Postrainer. So to some people, what I'm about to demonstrate is something they already know, and it's probably pretty basic to them, but this is a really, really cool thing that I've learned in the past little while. And I think if you're wondering if I'll get to something that actually has value to you as a developer, I think this will be it. So I'm going to demonstrate some of the things that the app does. It's basically a glorified alarm clock app. You have these things which are called reminders, and you can toggle them on, alarm activated, toggle them off, alarm deactivated. It's got settings. You can edit alarms, so I could change that, change the name, change the time, change whether it vibrates only, renews automatically. It's pretty basic stuff, and then I hit that, and then it says reminder updated successfully. And then I could even do something like adding a new alarm, just like that. So, and again, like this is something that might not be that surprising to more advanced developers, but to me this is just really cool. It's something I'm excited about. So it looks like I've added 2 new alarms to the application, and they're in the database, right? And when I click this one, it's activated now. Actually, there's no database. Let me edit another alarm and then hit the check mark button. Actually, better yet, let's change the name to coffee. Hit the check mark. Wait, it still says coffee break. Huh? So it's not actually writing anything to a database, and that's because I haven't written the database yet. And let me show you if you're confused about what I'm saying. And again, some of you might not be, but here's what's kind of cool about unit testing and modular code and stuff like that. Come on, go away, stupid emulator. There we go. Okay, so where my database will be is in the production build type, or source set. And it would be in data and then probably reminder, I think. Yeah, it would be reminder repository. I'm going to go ahead and open up reminder repository. It's basically, it's not functional. Apologies if anyone said something in the chat and it's not showing up. My phone's a little buggy that way. Anyways, as you can see here, this thing hasn't been implemented. It implements an interface, but it doesn't actually like really return anything except for this one, which just returns like just a random alarm, one of those alarm objects. So when I check out the mock source set and I open up data and then reminder, I have a fake repository, a fake database. And all it does is it returns what I want it to return. So here's the thing. It has these 2 methods, Boolean, return empty, and return failure. What these do is when I'm basically running these fakes either on a device or in unit tests, which I'll get to later, I can control what it returns. I can tell it to, and Sorry. I can control what it returns. Like if I want it to say completable.error, it does that. Or complete. Or with a maybe, I can choose to return like a test array list. I just add a test reminder to it. Test reminder is up here. It's just like a static thing, and it gets made. So why would you bother doing this? Well, probably it's pretty clear by what I just showed you. You can basically test if you've arranged your code such that your fragments and your presenters and your activities and your view presenter in the like model view presenter, the view in the presenter. I'm not sure. Model seems to mean so many different things to so many different people, and it's kind of frustrating. So I'm not even sure. But I'll say that to the extent that I understand what model means, if you keep the view and the presenter sort of separate and interact with the model through an interface, you can just mock or fake that interface, and your presenter doesn't need to know anything about your repositories, your services, or any kind of stuff like that. So that's really kind of interesting. It means you can basically write the front end of the app and test it and test what it does in response to what happens to the services in the database and all that stuff before you've written any of that stuff. So anyways, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about unit tests, because I think I've hopefully talked about, sort of explained why there's potential good in that. Now, with all this being said, before I continue, testing, like, here's the thing. Before I knew anything about testing, my first question was, do I need to do it? Well, obviously the answer to that is no. You don't need, in like the literal sense. You can write an amazing Android app or any kind of application without unit tests. So a better question, and this is the question which I will hopefully partly answer for you if I do well, is why would you want to use them? So what I'll try and relate now is my experience with unit tests, and I am absolutely not an expert in them. I started unit testing in the new year. Testing is something that's, when you look up a lot of resources on it, there are good ones out there, but when you look up a lot of stuff, it's very bizarre. It's just a jargon-laden wasteland of questionable explanations. There are some really good tutorials out there, but yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm ranting. Let's get to unit tests. So what I did is, here's another cool thing. So with the model view presenters, and this ties into unit testing, let me open up a presenter. Oh, sorry. I'm just going to have to turn the heater on in my room. If you're wondering why I've got the West Coast hipster outfit on, it's because I live in Canada and it's actually pretty cold. So, one sec. There could be some noise. Hopefully I can reach. I've also forgotten to, well, I haven't forgotten, but it's been a while since I've eaten, so I think I'm chilly because of that. Anyway, sorry about that. So let's talk about a presenter. So I just pulled up a random presenter in this project. One thing that might be a little interesting to some people is that I actually, I wrote all of the unit tests for this class before I wrote any of the implementation. Now, if you're wondering, if you're someone who doesn't know what a unit test is at all, then, understandably, I'll get to that. We'll get to unit tests, but for now, just bear with me. I wrote all of my unit tests. I tested all these methods before writing any of the implementation, basically, is what I'm stumbling through. So why would I do that? Why would I write the test first and then write the implementation? Don't you write tests to test the implementation? Isn't that the point? Yes, but there's another thing that unit tests do, which is kind of interesting and something that I've grown quite fond of. Now, again, you don't need to do this. This is not me trying to convince you to use unit tests. This is what I've learned about them. So let's open up. What's this? So this is reminder detail presenter, whatever. We can just pull that one up. So if nothing has gone wrong, I'm just actually going to run my unit tests. I'm going to make sure that the build variant is set to mock debug. It is. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit these two play buttons. And that's going to run all of these tests. Ah, Jesus. Yes, you can allow Android Studio access. Sorry about that. I'm on a new, I'm on Windows 10 now, so it's, I'm still getting used to configuring it. Anyways, as you can see, it ran all the tests and they all passed. So what is a unit test? Basically, and that's a hard question to answer because different people say different things. What is a unit test? Here's my understanding. No, I'm not going to tell you what a unit test is. I'm going to tell you what it does because I don't care what it is. What does it do? Why would I write this? Why would I write these lines of code? Let's get really specific here. Why would I write these lines of codes? I'm not going to talk, this isn't a unit test. This is just why would I do this set of steps, which I'll go over, before I write this stuff here. Let's use simple language. Well, let's go through a unit test. What is the first thing I did here? I said mockito.when. So basically what that does is, let me back up a little bit and let me increase the, why is control mouse wheel not zooming in? Oh, sorry. I'm just going to up the font size because some people are watching on lower resolutions, and that's let's do 22. Yeah, hopefully that's good. There's a point where it's so big that it's annoying for me. I'm not going to make a joke about that, but I could. Anyway, sorry. What was I saying? So let's look at a unit test. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about a unit test. Let's talk about a test class. This is a presenter test. It's not a unit test. Let's drop that. Let's just say this is a class which tests the behavior of the reminder detail presenter. It tests its behavior. At least that's my goal. There's other ways, there's other things you can test. I'm testing its behavior. What is the view? Well, hopefully you're familiar with that. Model view presenter, that is the view. That is like the user interface. Now, what I've done almost inadvertently is I think my model view presenter architecture is actually somewhat similar to a subset of model view presenter, which is called passive view. And that's like a really nerdy thing. If you're really obsessive about this stuff, you can look up, but I'm pretty sure I'm somewhat close to applying passive view, which basically passive view just means the view is really dumb. It makes as few decisions as possible. I bend the rules here and there, but I think everyone does to a certain degree. Maybe some people would argue that you should never bend the rules. I don't know. Anyways, so the view is just, the screen, me tapping on the screen. That's the view. I can fake that. I can simulate that. And the way that I simulate that with Mockito is I add this mock annotation. And then I create the view. I mock the view. So you add the mock annotation, and then I call this method down here, Mockito annotations.initMocks. And that's what actually that's what fires this thing. That's what actually makes it. Anyways, then I create the presenter with a repository, a fake one, and or a real one, depending on which build variant I'm in. And although I wouldn't be running tests in the production, I don't think I would run tests in the production build variant, but whatever. And then this scheduler thing is basically just for RxJava. RxJava uses schedulers, and that's how I supply them to RxJava. Now, an important thing to note is that I have this is an implementation detail, not a theory thing, just for one moment, because this is one important thing that tripped me up. If I go to mock and production, you'll notice that I have two schedulers. I don't know if I'm doing this most optimally, but this is what I had to do to be able to run tests with RxJava in the presenters. So the production, the real one, will supply, like, for example, schedulers.computation, schedulers.io, or Android schedulers.main thread. What are those? Just know that RxJava needs them. And these just tell RxJava, I want to run this on the computation thread, or I want to do it on the IO thread, and then I want to listen to the result on the main thread usually. Just like if you've ever used an async task, you know that an async task runs something on a different thread and then it calls back on the main thread. In async task, on post execute, if I recall correctly, is called on the main thread, and that's kind of the whole point of async task, I think, is to make that process easier. But RxJava can basically do that too, except probably better. Anyways, sorry. Rambling. But the mock one, the fake one, the one that I use during tests, it always supplies schedulers.trampoline. And that's because I don't understand it super well, but I think it's because the tests are run on the JVM, not like an actual device. You can't call Android schedulers because it's a JVM. So I think that's why, I'm pretty sure that's the reason why you need to supply this. Trampoline, I think it just, instead of running it on a different thread, it makes it synchronous. I could be wrong there. Anyways, again, rambling. I'm just going to check to see if I have any comments, because my phone has not shown any in a while now, and I don't want to, if someone asks a question, I don't want to leave them out. But okay, it looks like, okay, no, we're good. So anyways, moving on. So yeah, that's just an implementation detail. You need to set something like this up. You can, if you want this code, my repository is open source. Look up bracket. It's like this. Bracket cove slash. This one's called Postrainer. And that's GitHub. Of course, I'm not going to type out the full thing. You need to do that, but GitHub. And you can, it's an open source license, so do what you will. Anyways, so in the unit test, the test class, I call this setup method. And what it does is it prepares this for each subsequent test. Now these tests aren't actually like, these tests are, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't affect each other. There's a word for that. Run independently of each other. Yeah, these tests are run independently of each other, except this setup method, which is annotated with before, which is a Mockito annotation, I believe. Or maybe it's a JUnit. Let's look. No, sorry, it's a JUnit annotation. When you annotate that, this method gets run before each test. So it basically just builds the presenter. You don't have to do this. You can actually build each presenter or whatever in the test case itself. you can do that too. It's up to you. There might be some scenarios where that would be preferable. I don't know. Probably not in this case. So let's go over what one test is. Again, unit test, whatever. If you want to be able to research what I'm talking about, I believe what I've written here are called black box unit tests, but I could be wrong about that. I think I didn't go to school for this stuff, so I'm not good with terminology, but I think it's called a black box unit test. Anyways, so the first thing we do is, remember, this is a fake, Vue is a fake UI. It's something I can simulate. Now, why does it say mockito.when.then-return? Well, the thing is, in order to run the code in the presenter, and we're running the real presenter. The presenter is not fake. It's a real implementation. When we run that, it's going to be talking to the view. It might talk to the view. It might say to the view, hey, get me the reminder ID. And then the view is going to pull that from whatever text field it's from, or wherever it gets it from, whatever. And then the presenter is going to need that. So you need to mock that interaction. And the way that you do that is you say mockito.when this interaction happens, then return whatever. In this case, I'm returning reminder ID, which is just a static variable up here. Where is it? Reminder ID. Yeah, it's just 1, 1, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so yeah. When this interaction happens, then return reminder ID. So where's the, okay, this is the first one. So when that happens, the presenter is going to ask it for that data. It's going to get that in return, even though this view doesn't technically exist. But we're going to make the presenter think it exists. So there's kind of 3 steps here. So step 1 is kind of like, sorry, let's do it like this. And this is optional. It's not, you don't always need to do this. Okay, if the presenter talks to the view and expects data, fake that interaction here. I should say if the presenter needs to talk to the view. Let's say that. If the presenter needs to talk to the view, I realize my face might be blocking some of that. No, I think we're good. If the presenter talks to the view, blah, blah, blah. So what else? So that's kind of step, I won't call this step 1 because you don't always need to do it. If like there are, yeah, for example, in this test here, the presenter doesn't ask the view for anything, so I don't need to actually mock anything. Excuse me. Okay, so anyways, the last step, or sorry, the second step kind of ish, is test a method or unit. Now, I know I wasn't going to talk about unit testing, but I'm going to try and explain what I think the word unit means, and I'm not sure on it because, again, lots of different definitions. I think unit just means a piece of implementation in a software project. Now, that piece of implementation could be a class, or it could be a method. I think that's how it works. So that's why they don't say a method testing, or they don't say class testing, I think. I think it's because a unit just refers to some piece of implementation of varying size. I think there are different approaches and arguments to be made about what size units should be. I am the people that I've learned from suggest keeping them very small. So usually I'm testing one method, one interaction, I would say. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, look through my unit tests in the repository. You'll get an idea. Like, these things say what they do. So for example, when reminder ID arguments are invalid. So this is testing a case, an interaction, where a reminder ID isn't valid for some reason. What does that actually mean? I forget. Here, sorry. This is why you write good comments too. Comments are great. Why do I need to test this? I wrote why I need to test this up here. I actually literally forgot why. That was not theater. So let's say, for example, our presenter says to the database, hey, get me a reminder with this ID. And the database says, hey, I don't have a reminder with that ID. That is something that in my opinion, you would want to test how your presenter responds to that. So that could be a unit. When it's valid, test the write road. Now, why would I test things like that? There's several reasons. Reason number one. Oh, sorry, I jumped ahead. Let me talk about the final part, and then I'll get to why. Sorry. I'm tired and I'm winging it, so I'll only be so coherent. So here's the last this is sort of step 3. You verify what happens. You check what happens. So step 2, we called some unit, some method in the presenter. In this case, we're calling presenter.subscribe in this class here. And remember that I wrote this implementation after I wrote the unit test, and I'll talk about why in a moment. But I was actually testing this class. This is not a fake. This is the real reminder detail presenter, which works in the application. I know that, again, I know some of this stuff is obvious to some developers. I'm trying to cover a wide, I'm trying to keep junior developers hopefully learning things too. It's not obvious to everyone, including me when I was learning this stuff. So anyways, we call a verify on a view. Now, Mockito.verify, basically what it does is it checks a mock, which is the view, a fake, a mock. The problem with unit testing jargon I find is that a mock and a fake, those are two very specific things, but the word generally in English means pretty much the same thing. So the differentiation, in my opinion, the usage of the word is almost useless because, yeah, anyway, sorry, rambling. But yeah, view, not real. But what I can do with that not real view is I can see what happens to it. Did the presenter call make toast on the view with this particular ID, this error message? That's what this line of code means. I'll type that out. Did the presenter call these methods with the following, with these parameters? So in order for this test to pass, like for example, let's break the test. I'll send a different message, and this will be interesting, I think. Let's say error, whatever, input invalid blank. Doesn't make any sense. Let's run it. She's broke cotton. Now, what this information, I know it's tiny. I can barely see it. I won't read it. I won't, I'll just talk about it. What this is telling me is that this presenter did not call that method with that parameter. Now, here's a cool thing. This is, again, a break for a moment for an implementation thing. You can do things with Mockito, like you can say Mockito Mockito, come on brain, Mockito dot any, I could say Mockito dot any string, and let's try the test again, or sorry, any int, because it's a string resource. So let's say any int. If I run the test, it should pass now. Yeah. So tests can be, I think the jargon, the terminology that people say is, this makes the test less brittle. So, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. In this case, so here's the thing. If you don't care what the parameter is, you just want to know that the method was called with an int. You just want to know that a method was called. You don't care what the parameters are. That's when you would want to use this. And there are use cases like that. There are cases where you're not particularly concerned. You just want to make sure that some int got passed in. In this case, my unit test is, and I'll speak about this in more detail, this unit test was written before I wrote the implementation of the subscribe method. And this is the final step, and this is what's cool about, I think this is really the fundamental idea behind test-driven development. Again, I'm not an expert in that. I didn't go to school for this stuff. But from what I know about it, here's why test-driven development is real cool. I did take a course that did talk about test-driven development, so I guess technically I did learn a little bit about it, but I'm not an expert. And it had nothing to do with Android. This test is helping me. It tells me what the end result of my implementation, and my implementation is this code here, this stuff here. It tells me what it should do in the end. What is the expected result? And if you define expected results, it helps you avoid errors. What kind of errors? Lots of kinds of errors. Generally speaking, I would hazard a guess that the majority of the errors that I used to get as a developer were little mistakes, copy-paste kind of errors. One little letter is wrong. One thing, it sends the wrong message. This one sends something else, but I actually want it to send this thing here. If you have tests set up that say, this is what needs to happen in order for this test to run, you don't need, as long as the test is correct, and that's not always the case, but as long as the test is correct, you can't pass the test. And therefore, it stops you from making the errors. It says to you, hey, this is not right. This doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So I think that's probably hopefully I've explained that pretty clearly. And I'm not sure what else. I don't think I'll be talking for very much longer because I have a lot of stuff to do still. But yeah, so I think those are kind of the two really cool things that I've learned in the past couple months. Actually, no, there's more. RxJava is really damn cool. But in terms of big revelations, because I already kind of knew a little bit about what RxJava was going to do. I just didn't know how it was implemented. Whereas with unit testing, I didn't know what it did and I didn't know how to implement it. With unit testing, where it has really, really helped me is when it comes time to write the presenters, I make fewer errors I catch the errors sooner. That's a better way of saying that. I catch errors sooner. I don't need to have a working database to catch dumb errors. That's what the power of the test is. I haven't written the repository, but I've written how the presenter will react in accordance with the contract specified by the database. That's a lot of big words, and hopefully that made sense. Anyways, so yeah, I was listing out things. Sorry, I'm tired. I was listing out catch errors sooner. It makes the design process faster because I know exactly what I need to do. I'm like, all right, write the method. What does it need to do in on air? Needs to call these two things. And this is already, do you see these two pieces of code here in the subscribe? Look a lot like these two. See the, I'm not sure if I actually tested all that shit. I probably didn't, because there's, did I? Oh no, I totally did. Well, I called a lot of them. Cool. I thought I was lazy, but I was only slightly lazy. But yeah, again, I verified all that stuff. So hopefully that kind of demonstrates, like, you're basically, if you look at it from the perspective of if you look at it from the perspective of I could just spend this time writing the implementation, I would suggest to you to try test-driven development and see what you think about that. The thing is, it takes a little while before you can write the tests quickly, but once your unit tests are set up to go and you're used to writing them, I think it makes the design process faster, less error prone, and most of all, I can write all this stuff without writing a database. So if someone else was working, if I was in a team and someone's like the database guy, which apparently is quite common that one person gets lumped into doing databases, is it's one of those things where like you have to it's one of those things where you have to do it poorly at first so that you don't get asked to do it later, because it sucks. I'm totally joking. If you're interested in databases, that's really cool. I'm just joking. I forgot what I was saying though. I don't need to have a database. So that guy could be, or girl, that person could be, could write that whole thing, and I could write my whole thing, and as long as we communicate through an interface, and for an example of that, look at this. I'll pull it up. Reminder, detail, contract, or sorry, no, totally the wrong one. Data. Sorry, reminder. So this is going to be the repository, the database that stores reminders. I have this reminder source class. This contract, as long as the person doing the front end stuff and the person doing the database stuff, as long as they both have this contract and they both respect it, and it works, it's well formed, you can have different people working on the same project very seamlessly. So yeah. Anyways, I think I have babbled long enough, and it's time for me to also remind everyone that what I have done today is done my best to share my experience with people. We're gonna switch to the full webcam mode now. All that I've done today is I've tried to share my experience and knowledge, and I don't want anyone to think that I am claiming or trying to act like an expert. If there's anything I said in this video that you flat out disagree with or think could be improved or even agreed with, please let me know. I always ask, please be respectful. I don't have time for disrespectful people. I just don't. I have all the time in the world for nice people, and I have all the time in the world for the Android community, because I think it's a really good community. But if you come at me with an attitude, you're going to get an attitude. If you're respectful to me, I will be more respectful back to you. So anyways, yeah, that's basically it. I think I'm going to call it a night for the stream there. Thanks for watching. I don't think we had many viewers because it was a really not a normal time for me to stream, but this I am going to be probably talking about or working on program for 12 hours today, and I've got a few more days of that ahead, so I probably will not be streaming for a while, but this is recreation for me. This is fun for me, and hopefully it was enjoyable for you. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later. Oops.